In that last clip we just played, Joe Scarborough was like, everything we're hearing after the election about inflation. How are you just now finding out about inflation? How? How is that possible? Honestly, I don't think I believe him. I don't believe him. Inflation has been a big topic for a few years now. And he's gonna pretend like they didn't know about how serious inflation is until after the election? Is it possible that the inflation story was a little inconvenient for what Morning Joe does literally every morning, Monday through Friday on MSNBC?
In this one, Anna Kasparian goes all in on Joe Scarborough in this TYT podcast episode, and she does not hold back. Kasparian calls out Scarborough and MSNBC's blatant hypocrisy on inflation, pointing out how they conveniently, quote unquote, discover inflation only after the election. She exposes the network's narrative shaping tactics, questioning their sudden shift, and pulls no punches on why it's all a little too convenient. So if you're tired of media spin, buckle up. Anna Kasparian is about to torch this narrative, and I'll break it down for you as we go along. Let's get into it.
Butter is $7?
Yeah.
What? Is it framed in gold?
No, Joe, it's not framed in gold. Butter is $7 because it turns out inflation is real. And had he been aware of that, had he actually understood what ordinary Americans were going through, economically speaking, maybe he would be a little more sympathetic toward the electorate in voting against the Biden-Harris, administration in this 2024 presidential election. So anyway, this was on today's installment of Morning Joe. Obviously, Joe Scarborough looked absolutely stunned to find out that inflation has drastically increased the price of groceries, officially making him the last person in America to make that discovery. Now, let's watch the full clip so you can get a sense of how this interaction went down in context.
You look at those numbers where Donald Trump did better in New York and areas around New York, that probably contributed a good deal to it. I want to talk about economy for a second. A few weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, somebody who was going to be voting for Kamala Harris came up to me and said, "Oh my God, Trump's going to win." I go, "Why is that?" He goes, I went to the grocery store, butter's over $3. I kind of laughed and I said, well, that's kind of reductive, isn't it? Said it to myself. To him, I smiled and I said, "Good point." But it actually, everything we're hearing after the election is,
I'm just saying, the $7.
What's that?
The $7.
What's that? Butter is $7?
Yeah.
What? Is it framed in gold?
Let's stop here. Kasparian's not buying this clueless act from Scarborough. Inflation has been front and center for years now, and the fact that he's just realizing this post-election, come on. It's almost like the issue was hidden on purpose. Convenient timing, right? The average person has been feeling this economic squeeze, but suddenly, now it's worth mentioning. Scarborough acts shocked, but Kasparian sees right through it, and frankly, so should everyone watching.
Okay. Anyway,
depends on where you go. But
okay. Well, yeah. Okay.
$7.
You guys might have missed it, but I want to make sure you know or you caught it. In that last clip we just played, Joe Scarborough was like, everything we're hearing after the election about inflation. How are you just now finding out about inflation?
By the way, be sure to leave your opinions and thoughts down in the comments below. It's a place for discussion. Also, be sure to give us a like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Let's get back into it.
How? How is that possible? Honestly, I don't think I believe him. I don't believe him. Inflation has been a big topic for a few years now. And he's gonna pretend like they didn't know about how serious inflation is until after the election? Is it possible that the inflation story was a little inconvenient for what Morning Joe does literally every morning, Monday through Friday on MSNBC, which is serve as operatives for the Democratic Party. And that would require them to pretend like inflation isn't really that big of a deal. Isn't really happening, shouldn't focus on it at all. But now that the election's over, all is said and done, Did you know that butter's $7? What are they doing? Framing it in gold? This is supposed to be a news show. This is supposed to be a morning news show. Okay.
And there it is, plain as day. Kasparian's calling them out, saying that this is supposed to be news show. When a platform meant for informing the public is clearly pushing a narrative, how can viewers expect any real accountability? Scarborough claims to be shocked by inflation, but where was this outrage before? The purpose of journalism is to inform, not to serve as PR for any political agenda. Kasparian's frustration is spot on. The media's job is to be honest with the people, not pick sides.
Now, since the results of Tuesday night's election, Joe Scarborough has chastised Democrats for focusing too much on Trump bad, stated that they should have focused on illegal immigration, and also criticized their focus on identity politics, things that, maybe he should have been open and honest about before the election took place, instead of gaslighting the American people on behalf of a failing campaign. But nonetheless, let's take a look at more of what Joe had to say.
Every Democrat that we have ever sat down with dinner with over the past 5 years who have kids that go to colleges say their kids are afraid to speak in class because they'll be canceled. It's having an impact from, again, the trans ad to, the athletics. And by the way, as we've said on the show 1,000 times, Democrats should be smarter on the women's athletics thing. 85% of Americans oppose men transitioning after puberty and competing against women. People need to look back at the campaign, and they certainly should feel free to call out Donald Trump for all the things that he said that were shocking and deeply offensive. But if you're a Democrat right now and think that's going to get you elected 4 years from now, it didn't get you elected a couple of nights ago. There was some reluctance to go there, to talk about the things that were concerning Americans that really mattered this year. Illegal immigration, the mass border crossings. This isn't just about tax cuts. This isn't just about economics. This is about cultural markers that matter greatly in these people's lives.
I know that Joe Scarborough would like us all to memory hole a rant that he went on recently, a rant that I covered here on this show on a Wednesday by myself. Do you guys remember when Joe Scarborough and everyone else on set were attacking journalists for doing honest reporting about Kamala Harris?
Here's the twist. Scarborough once defended Kamala Harris from criticism and even discouraged objective reporting, claiming Trump was a unique threat. Now he's turning around to criticize her after the election loss. It's clear Scarborough wants to play both sides. First, protect the image, then criticize for relevance. This is the type of media hypocrisy that keeps viewers frustrated and distrusting.
And in that reporting, they would talk about her flip-flops, like from, being against oil drilling to all of a sudden being in favor of oil drilling. And Joe Scarborough was like, why are journalists doing objective journalism right now? They shouldn't do that because Trump is a special threat. And so reporters shouldn't report anything negative about Kamala Harris. Okay, they're getting too cutesy with their objective reporting. We don't want that. Reporters and journalists should actually serve as operatives for the Democratic Party and Kamala Harris's campaign. And now all of a sudden, he's totally pretending like he didn't say that. And after Kamala Harris loses the election, he has the audacity to pretend like no one else was talking about all of these critiques. It's just, we were talking about it and we were getting a lot of crap for it from people like Joe Scarborough. Now, he didn't attack us personally, right? But he attacked other reporters, other media figures who just wanted to cover the two campaigns fairly, honestly, accurately. Because guess what? At the end of the day, neither party really matters. What matters is informing the American voters, ensuring that they have the accurate information necessary to make the right decision for themselves. But that's not what Joe Scarborough believes the role of journalism is in America. In his eyes, and he's not the only one, as the election is ongoing, well, you shut your mouth about the criticism and you be a good cheerleader for the Democratic Party. Otherwise, we don't want to see anything from you. That's what he was saying before the election, and now after the election, the Monday morning quarterbacking, right? All of a sudden, he's an expert on all the things that have gone wrong in Kamala Harris's campaign. Oh, all of a sudden inflation is an issue. Who knew? Who knew that inflation? How are these people still employed? How do people tune into this show in the morning, every morning, to get their information? They have participated in the cover-up of Joe Biden's mental decline.
This is the knockout punch. Kasparian is calling out Scarborough and mourning Joe for gaslighting the public on Biden's cognitive state, something that they pretended didn't exist until it was too late. Now they're pointing fingers and acting surprised, but it's a bit rich coming from those who participated in shaping the very narrative they now criticize.
Which obviously put the Democratic Party and Kamala Harris at a massive disadvantage considering the fact that Biden didn't drop out until July. After that, by Morning Joe, Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough, after that disastrous debate performance from Joe Biden, continued trying to gaslight the American public about his mental decline. These people are not to be trusted.
This is Anna's mic drop moment. She's cutting right to the core of Scarborough's sudden flip-flop, saying these media figures are complicit in misleading the public. They turned a blind eye when it mattered, and now that there's fallout, they're quick to criticize. Anna's right to call out this about face. It's almost like the network's waking up just in time to save face. But as she points out, the lack of integrity is exactly why they're losing trust.
And I'm sorry, no cookies for Joe Scarborough because all of a sudden he's willing to acknowledge all of the different things that Kamala Harris's campaign got wrong. You should have done that before the election. You know, that type of pressure might have convinced her and her team to recalibrate. I get that the Democratic politicians don't want that. I get that they want us to like pat them on the butt and tell them they're doing a good job. But that's a short-sighted thing to do because they're not going to have the ability to recalibrate if everyone around them is nodding their heads and saying, yeah, you're doing great, but they weren't doing great. And I think the results of the election this week makes that abundantly clear.
I'd love to hear you guys' opinion and thoughts on this clip down in the comments below. We always like to have a discussion down in the comments, so leave it down below. Also, be sure to give us a like and subscribe. Really helps out the channel, and we'll see you guys in the next one.